Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night on TalkTV and this is, of course, the place to be. I'm Mike Graham. We're going to be judging over the next hour who has been the biggest plank. And I have to say, we couldn't squeeze them all in this week, so we might have to double up on one or two. But I've got a great panel today. I've got Russell Quirk, always ready to serve when he's not getting arrested for one thing or another. We've got Esther, who hasn't been arrested yet, but probably will be. Steve Denyer, who is, of course, visiting us from Virgin, where he strides it with absolute aplomb. And, of course, the beautiful Alex Phillips, former MEP, queen of lots of things, which we can't get into all of it. Here's Plank of the Week. This is what we're fighting for this week. It's been quite traumatic getting it all together this week, I have to say. So I'm very happy to see that we are going to do Russell Quirk as the first nomination. What do you got for us?
Yeah, this is a good one, I reckon. I know you'll be the judge of that, but
yes.
It is my first nomination is Daniel Khalif.
Yes.
The terror suspect.
Yes. Or Papillon, as he was known.
Yeah, must make that clear. Terror suspect, innocent until proven guilty. So this is a man that was trained by the British Army for a number of years.
Yeah.
Managed to escape from Wandsworth, either aided or unaided, we don't know, as we know, by strapping himself
on the underside of
a vehicle.
Lorry, yes.
And you think, well, I personally thought at the time, this guy's gone forever, right? So he's a terrorist and he's been trained by the British Army. That's it. Lo and behold, only 5 days later, having got 6 miles only, he gets caught. And not only does he get caught, he's merrily pedalling down a Chiswick path. No disguise, hasn't shaved his head, not even a pair of sunglasses.
Was it one of those bikes that you can just rent? And he rented it? Or
his real name.
And he nicked it?
Yeah.
It's Danny.
So sorry, but there is no disguise whatsoever, no attempt to get that far.
Here he is getting apprehended by the terror police. Or the anti-terror police.
But Mike, he goes north into the centre of one of the busiest cities in the world, rather than, going south and trying to get into something a little bit more rural. I mean, what an absolute...
I suppose, but hiding in plain sight is maybe not a bad idea.
I would go to the hole.
If you turned up somewhere... Well, it didn't work, no. But I have to say, you'd have to take your hat off to the people who did finally apprehend him, because it must be quite difficult looking for a needle in a haystack.
He was cited by a number of people because he was in a busy city undisguised.
Yes.
Only 5 days having only got 6 miles.
Do you know, a friend of mine said she thought she saw him on Tinder.
Really?
On Saturday morning.
Well,
so, I mean...
entirely possible.
I think it could be the case.
I mean, there were a couple... There was a couple of mistaken identities as well. They pulled some guy off a train somewhere in Stevenage or something like that.
Which is giving him too much credit.
Turned out it wasn't him at all.
Yeah.
So my concern is, we shouldn't, thankfully, perhaps have that much faith in terrorists and their ability to do anything based on his form. But sadly, we also shouldn't have much faith in the training of the British Army.
No, or perhaps in Wandsworth Prison security. They've now moved a load of people out of Wandsworth Prison, presumably to a location unknown, where they might escape from sometime later.
Well, I know I would say this, Mike, but I think it should be sold off for flats, don't you?
You would say that, yeah. Well, I'm surprised it hasn't been, to be honest. We had some very odd things happen over the course of the week. I had one guy, I think probably one of the oddest calls I think I've ever taken on the show. A guy rang in and said, I used to deliver food to Wandsworth Prison. I went, what sort of food? And he went, cheese. I'm like, you used to deliver cheese to Wandsworth Prison?
What variety?
What sort of cheese? No, I asked him. No, he said, mostly cheddar. I said, well, I'm glad to hear that you didn't give them like
British
a cheese plate. There was goat's cheese.
Well, the inmates deciding a bit of brie.
Roquefort, maybe, a little bit of sort of brie, perhaps. I mean...
Really? And they say you have it cushy in prison.
Well, apparently it's not bad, is it? And if you can get to work in the kitchen... I mean, my other line was that people said, he might be on his way to some foreign land, because he's obviously working on behalf of another country. Yeah. Iran was mentioned, And mostly people are coming the other way. And I said, look, if he gets in a boat and tries to cross the channel, you know what's going to happen. The Border Force are going to rescue him and bring him back. Where the hell do you think you're going?
No.
You're going in the wrong direction.
But Mike, no, in reality, he was on his way to an artisan coffee shop in Chiswick.
OK, well, now it's over to Esther. Yes. What's your first nomination?
Peter.
Peter.
Because apparently milk is a tool of the white supremacists.
Of course it is.
So a tweet has resurfaced from Peter's
Everybody
Twitter
knows
account.
that.
Of course, especially me. A tweet has resurfaced from Peter's Twitter account back in 2017 where they said, actually, milk has been used as a symbol of the far-right white supremacists. So just, go vegan instead because nothing feels as good as oat and almond milk.
Well, how is oats and almond milk not a vision?
It's also less. It's
of
not
white
as
supremacy?
nutritious as
But it's
dairy
the same colour, isn't it?
But that is the most white drink I can think of.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You go to Shoreditch to a
Exactly.
Yummy Mummy's cafe, and that is all they're drinking.
Yeah.
Right.
But I don't know how they somehow managed to link white supremacy with milk.
No.
I'm pretty sure there have been tribes that have drank cow's milk
Yes.
for probably even longer than
Absolutely.
white
And
European
Humans
people
have
have.
drunk breast milk, one would imagine, for hundreds of thousands of years.
Are
Right?
you calling females cows?
No, I'm just saying that milk is
Would you
white.
look
But they are a
Where it
source
comes
of
from.
milk, though. Well, they
Yeah.
can be. But I mean, I thought Peter.
Words in my mouth. I'm going to get bashed on Twitter now for the next 6
know.
days.
I mean, what's it got to do? What's white supremacy got to do
Is
with
it just
Peter?
the-
I
Is it just
can't
the
believe
colour?
they made that link though, because
Yeah.
I scoured the internet to find how milk was
Is it the
racist.
colour?
Well, apparently that's the only thing I could
Billions of
find.
Indians who are drinking their milk, and the Maasai in Kenya
Yeah.
drinking
Yeah.
their milk.
Right.
But come on, it's
Isn't
just
everything-
intersectionality, isn't it? If you have one thing, one element of wokeism, you've got to adopt the whole drop.
But
down
isn't
menu,
everything
don't
racist
you?
now? Though? You know, we know statues are racist, we know
Yeah.
museums are racist.
Yeah.
we
The
know
countryside
chocolate
is racist.
Well, yeah.
Countryside
Oh, yeah.
is
Countryside
racist.
Countryside is
racist.
definitely racist.
Yeah.
One of the strangest things you'll notice about India is when you go and get tea in India and they put the milk in the teapot. It's the weirdest thing you've ever
Yeah.
seen. And they pour the
Really?
tea out with milk in it.
Well, it's 90% milk,
It
isn't
just
it?
doesn't
With like
look
a
right.
whisper of
But
tea
it
in the
doesn't look
top.
right, does it? It looks like.
I like it. Come on, you're saying like a white supremacist now.
Well,
saying
I've
it
only
doesn't
been to-
look right.
I've only been to India once, and they brought me the tea, and I poured it, and I thought that just looked weird. I mean, it tasted fine, but it just looks odd coming out of a pot.
Did they not
Milky.
pour it from a distance through a dirty sock? Because that's the way they
Huh?
do it in the south.
No,
Oh,
I
yeah,
was-
roadside tea.
I'm pretty sure their socks are not. They don't pour it through a dirty sock.
No.
I think maybe it's just like a stained sock that they have.
They didn't pour it through any kind of sock. I think they just had the normal.
Maybe they didn't
sort of-
like you.
No.
So you look like a white supremacist.
No, it was just a normal tea strainer. I'm pretty
But
sure.
do we think now that all these protestations from the woke left about everything being racist, do we think it's actually become a good thing that now everybody ignores everything they say because it's always just
Well, I think they
ridiculous?
do. There's an element of that. But here's Peter with one of their promotional videos, I think we can see here, which is trying to make an even more bizarre point.
New dairy product being launched.
Hi, come in and take a seat. Thanks for coming. So this is a focus group for a new dairy brand.
Would you like to try new milk?
Give it a try.
This is a smooth, it's like a milkshake basically, but smooth.
That's regular cow's milk?
It's dog's milk.
What? What do you mean that's dog's milk?
Dog milk?
Milk for dogs?
Why you give me, I drink dog milk.
You mean that this is produced by a dog? You should have said that first.
I would call the
I'm
police.
assuming
they're
that's
trying
a
to make.
stunt. I'm sure.
I
I'm pretty
would-
sure
I would
you can't get
genuinely
that
call
much
the
milk
police.
from a dog, can you?
What dog
Several
is
dogs.
I mean, I suppose you
it?
could.
It could come from a bully dog.
Yeah, bully dog.
Yeah,
So are they trying to make the point that if it's okay to drink cow's milk,
Yes,
then you should
exactly.
be drinking
You
dog's
can
milk?
drink any animal's milk.
Yeah, right.
But that's just not even fundamentally true, is it? I mean, cows just stand around munching grass with their five
Yeah.
stomachs, kindly processing it so we can all
Right.
delight on their delicious milk.
Yeah.
Dogs eat each other's poo.
Yes,
And they
they
drink
do.
from the toilet.
Yeah.
But it's like saying because we eat cows and pigs, we should be eating each other.
And dogs.
Which is equally
And
ridiculous.
dogs.
And
Well,
dogs.
Yeah.
there's some people that do eat dogs.
Well, there are, but luckily there's not many. But
Koreans.
it's a very odd world, isn't it? I mean, I've been trolled by many sort of different groups. I'd like to think I've been trolled by almost every other group that hates me. And the vegans were by far and away the worst because they send you these horrific pictures, yeah, because they have this campaign about how awful it is to be a cow because all that happens is you get milked and milked and milked until you finally just collapse and that's the end of your life. You know, and I'm sure it's not all that pleasant, but I mean, the way they kind of sell it.
I know some
and
vicious
it's really
vegans.
horrible. They
Vicious
sell
people
this,
who-
they push this
Can you
really
imagine
awful
how
pictures.
hungry you would be all the time before you get to eat his lettuce?
Yeah.
Of course you're going to be in a bad mood.
Yeah, it's not good.
But
I
there
mean,
is
my
an irony,
father used to
isn't
say the problem with being a vegan is you have to eat your weight in sort of beans
Yeah.
before you get the same protein.
And the
as one
farting,
steak.
I don't even want to think
But there's an
about
irony to them being so animal-loving and self-righteous and
Yes.
actually also being so nasty and vicious, isn't
Yeah, they just don't like people. Steve,
Hello.
who have you got for your first nominee?
I'm going to go for Robert Peston.
It's a very
if you
good
guys
choice.
have seen this video.
Long
Robert Peston.
time since he's been nominated, so I think this is a great one.
So this is him performing Anarchy in the UK.
Yes.
This is, it looks like the worst festival that you could ever attempt to go to.
Yeah.
You can imagine the Sex Pistols going, why did we even bother
Right.
back in the late 70s,
And
early
you'll,
80s?
of course, not be surprised to know that it took place in Hampstead. Of
course.
That great bastion of anarchy. But let's have a look, because we've got a clip, and this is Robert Peston and Ed Balls, I think.
On the drums.
Playing, Ed Balls on the drums, playing the Sex Pistols.
I am the Antichrist. I am an anarchist. I know what I want, I know how to get it.
That is possibly the worst thing I've ever seen. And I've seen some pretty bad things.
Sid Vicious is probably rolling his grave
I would imagine
right
so.
now.
And probably so is John Lydon and all the rest of the
Yeah.
I mean, that is horrendous. It shows you, doesn't it, who Robert Peston actually thinks he is. He thinks he's interesting, right? One, which is his first mistake. He also thinks that he's talented, which is his second mistake, because he's not that either. He's just really, really irritating.
The first comment under the YouTube video was, "This is horrifying."
It really is. It really is.
Says it all.
And it's like, you know, oh yeah, let's pretend we're all anarchists and let's pretend that, you know, in fact, he is actually part of the establishment, has always been part of the establishment, from the Financial Times to the BBC, now he's on ITV.
But it's pretty appropriate that he should be singing about anarchy, giving his obvious left-wing views. And
Yes.
Ed Ball's the same. I guess that's kind of, that works.
I guess so. But the thing that I find most amusing about it is a very undiverse crowd of sort of ageing hippies who now live in Hampstead with their millions and their champagne, and they're sort of trying to pogo badly because they haven't got the energy.
I bet Jeremy Corbyn was right there.
Well, it's apparently, do you know who was there? Apparently Keir Starmer turned up.
Right.
Because it's only a hop, skip and a jump from...
What was this? What was this thing? This
It
horrible
was some kind of
monstrosity I missed?
Hampstead
mini
lovin'.
festival.
Hampstead lovin'. I don't even know what it was for. But I'm just glad I wasn't
Well,
there.
it feels actually awkward watching that.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes
You
you
know,
just see something,
it
I
gives
don't
you
want
the
to look
ick.
at this
It's
because
kind
I'm
of-
actually feeling embarrassed.
Yeah.
It's like you're dying from secondhand embarrassment.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's a very good
I'm sad I
nomination,
saw
though,
that.
because Peston, I don't think Peston's been on this since all of those ridiculous questions he used to ask in the COVID press conference.
That went on for hours.
That went on for hours. I always tell the story. I was in the car once and was listening because there was nothing else to do, and I was driving somewhere, and he started his question. Somebody called me, and I was on the phone for about 15 minutes. And when I went back, he was still asking the question. He hadn't finished.
In 17
He
parts.
hadn't finished the question. Just bizarre.
Yeah.
Alex, down to
Okay,
you.
so my nomination is Kew Gardens,
Yes.
which is an establishment I very much enjoy. Who doesn't like a bit of horticulture and botany to cheer themselves up and get out of smoky, grim London and into the wilds and wonders of British nature? Oh no, because everything that's special in life has to be sort of injected with a hard dose of activism, doesn't
Yes,
it?
of course.
And what better than inviting a drag queen to tell everybody how fungus is apparently gay?
Fungus is gay.
Yep,
Who
it's gay.
knew? Are you sure it's not
Not all fungus.
Are you sure it's not LGBTQ gardens?
It
I
is
just
now.
thought of that.
Nice.
But no, you read the blurb on the website. So they've got this month of celebrating diversity and biodiversity or something. And I'm there thinking, well, it's GCSE biology, wasn't it? You know, plants have female and male parts, and some plants are female or male, and
Yes.
fine, whatever. What has that got to do with drag queens?
Nothing.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Why does it suddenly have to be fly a rainbow flag, get a drag queen involved, and make this a gay event? It's just botany and
Can you
biology.
imagine the
Right.
phone call that was that booked this drag queen? Like, hey, you know, we have something totally related to anything LGBT, and that's flowers at Kew Garden. I just think, what?
But why does everything have to have these weeks and months and why? Do you know, my feeling is like no one cares anymore. But the more this sort of activism's foisted upon us, it kind of is starting to make people get a little bit.
People
irritated.
do.
I think
yeah,
people-
no, people are starting to get really irritable about it.
Yeah,
They go,
exactly,
I'm
it's
just,
kind
not,
of-
I'm just not
I
bothering.
think
In fact,
people
I
are at
won't
the
bother
point
going
where
to
they
Kew
just-
Gardens ever again now.
I mean,
You know?
learning that there are potentially gay mushrooms, which I don't think is even a thing, because it's not a sentient thing, is it? So how you could give it a sexuality, I don't know. It's not exactly going to suddenly make a gay person go, that's it. My life is so much better now. I felt so oppressed, but now I've learned that there's a species of mushroom that someone could term as gay. Everything's fine.
It is kind of ridiculous.
I do wonder, though, that in the corporate world, there's this huge movement now, this thing called ESG.
Yeah, but it's the
environmental
Stonewall
social.
thing, though, isn't it?
Well, yes. but
Stonewall inspired.
And there are now organisations that are obsessed by it, you know, that are perhaps a bit left-leaning. We know the likes of Wix and Ben & Jerry's and Costa and so on. But there are now a lot of boxes from an ESG perspective to tick that then dictates whether you can raise investment, for instance, or whether indeed a bank might or might not cancel you, you know, as we've seen over recent weeks. So this is going too far because it's now indoctrinated within the corporate environment.
Well,
you
funny enough,
have
it's
to
the
do
big,
this.
It's the big corporate companies that are actually worse than ever.
Yeah.
But as ever, Alex, you would expect me to have an answer for you, and I've got some good news for you. We've got a YouTuber explaining how plants can be gay.
Today we're going to be talking about the gayest houseplants. We're going to take it and run with it. So some of these plants may be a little flamboyant, a little showy, or some of these plants might just radiate gay energy. But I mean, if you look at this plant, you really can't tell me that it is not feminine and dainty and flamboyant. This plant has gay energy.
He's not very good,
Flamboyant.
is he?
Who is that?
Steve,
I'll be doing a documentary on this,
I mean,
guys. I mean, you know,
isn't-
next
yeah, but
summer.
isn't this part of the problem where you've got a guy sitting there saying the only two words you can think of about sort of gay people is that you're a bit flamboyant and you might be a bit dainty. Well, I'm sorry, I know lots of gay people, many of whom are not at all flamboyant. Some of them are not even dainty. So what the hell are they talking about?
Do you think the
Why are they
philosophy-
trying to actually make some kind of literal stereotype
Does just the
of a gay
philosophy
person?
also extend to the trans movement? I wonder if, you know, a Venus flytrap can somehow identify as a daffodil.
Yes, very possibly
is that
so.
a thing?
I don't know.
I knew you were going there.
I mean, I think this is part of the problem with the gender ideology arguments that, you know, as soon as you go into whether or not you can have a plant that can do that.
Well, it might be a little bit
you
of
probably
parsley that
can't.
wants to be an oak tree.
Or a cow. I mean, if a cow's giving milk, I mean, there was a New York Times, famously New York Times interviewer who was at some event in the Midwest somewhere in America who asked about the cow milking process. And the woman who was answering the question went, well, there's only one gender that can produce milk in the bovine world, and it's a cow. And the New York Times journalist kind of didn't know what else to say then. So, yeah, I mean, you can get a bit ridiculous about all this, can't you, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I just think that the idea that everybody who's gay is somehow flamboyant is kind of offensive, actually, isn't it? Not that I take offence at anything, but you know what I mean?
The clip was ridiculous. I don't know who that is, but...
I don't think it's going to be doing that well.
It'll go viral.
Do you know what? I think I might start a campaign to stand up for heterosexual cis males in the floristry business, because I bet there's not a lot of them. I bet they're underrepresented.
Well, I mean, they may well be, or there may be people pretending to be flamboyant when they're actually not flamboyant at all and sort of forcing it. I don't know when you would want to do that.
But then, you know, I'm sorry, it actually disproves Q, doesn't it? Because I don't think that mushrooms are particularly flamboyant.
No, they're not. In fact,
Also,
mostly...
imagine being compared
Your
to...
toadstool might be. Your toadstool
they are
might
fun
be.
guys,
A
aren't they?
fly...
Oh,
that
was good. That was good for Ross Quirk. You can go. Right, now, coming up in the next bit, we're going to be talking about the royal family, but not in the way that you think. Prince Harry and Meghan were back in action this week, and they were making everybody smile with their lovey-dovey explanations of life. But we're not talking about them. We're talking about the bloke who wanted to disrupt the royal ceremonies at the time of the coronation of King Charles. It's all coming up on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. This is the one place where you don't have to judge anybody because we do all that for you. And we've had a pretty good start, actually, some very good nominations. I'm going to go now into the royal family territory. And I know that people like that a lot because they like us to nominate members of the royal family. But you know what? It's been an interesting week because Harry has been going backwards and forwards from Dusseldorf to London, back to Dusseldorf. He's been launching the Invictus Games. He's been getting a bit of flack for some of the things that he's done. But right at the end of the kind of week, we saw Meghan suddenly appearing. Nobody was sure if she was going to come, but she ended up turning up as well. And they're walking around hand in hand, looking very nicey, and everyone's going, oh, isn't it lovely to see such a young... I wish they'd stop calling them a young couple in love, because they're really not young. 40-something isn't young. But, you know, listen, I'm not going to give them a hard time for being together and doing the Invictus Games. But I have to say, Harry's footballing prowess needs to be drawn to attention because one of the things that he did was while he was in Dusseldorf, he appeared on some TV show, and this is him trying to kick a ball through a hole, which is bigger than the size of the ball, and he doesn't even come close. He tries it 5 times, and I'm afraid he is beaten by the German defence minister, who's actually rather good. So I'm afraid, Harry is now lost on penalties to the Germans alongside every other...
we always knew he was a disgrace.
I know, we did. So, but I'm not going to dwell on that, actually, because my nominee for this week is not actually anyone in the royal family. It's somebody who hates the royal family, and that would be one Graham Smith. You might remember him. He's the guy that runs Republic. And he's actually originally, I think, from South Africa. And he was all over the airwaves during the coronation because he wanted to prove that there were lots of people in this country who don't like the royal family, and he wanted to demonstrate against the coronation. And, of course, what he then decided to do was to do it right and to liaise with the police to make sure that they were happy with what he was going to do. He rang them up. He got a hold of some guy who was going to liaise with him. He told him a plan. He said, we're going to drive into London on the day of the coronation in a van. Inside the van, there are going to be several things that we're going to wave around, and we're going to be telling you exactly where we're going to park the van, and then we're going to tell you exactly where we're going to put the stuff, and then you'll approve it and everything will be fine. Unfortunately for him, he pitched up in the van with all of his dopey people from Republic who were really not wanted at the coronation at all. And, of course, the police were waiting for them because he told them exactly where he was going to be. And they then arrested him and put him in custody for the rest of the day. Brilliant. He's going to go, no, not exactly a master criminal, this guy. And he's now apparently going to sue the Metropolitan Police, which is a waste of more taxpayers' money because, of course, Metropolitan Police's Mark Rowley will have to find a barrister, they'll have to get legal advice, they'll have to defend the action. And this guy is a complete and utter pain in the neck, and he's a nuisance beyond all repair because if he wanted to determine that the royal family was not popular, he could have gone to the big Republic demonstration, which was in Trafalgar Square.
Yeah.
You know, far enough away, where thousands of people went and protested, as you say, legitimately. This guy wanted to go onto the Mall and he wanted to cause problems, and that would have been wrong. And nobody knew exactly what he was going to do. But if he'd startled the horses or made some really horrible event, you know, go wrong as a result of him scaring, you know, people there, and it would have looked dreadful.
But Mike, the biggest surprise to me is that the police actually arrested somebody.
Yeah. I mean, I was pleased. I mean, some people said, oh, this is the thin end of the wedge. It means that you can't have the right to protest. No, I think in this case, you know, the coronation was a very successful day. People watched it in their billions, I think, around the world. It was the biggest show that the BBC have put out all year. And the British people certainly, by far and away, in a massive majority, want the monarchy, and they enjoyed the day, right?
It would have been a disaster had anything gone wrong. There were all kind of rumours that people were going to throw rape alarms, you know, at horses and disturb the horses, and
which would
it would have been embarrassing for everybody.
Yeah.
Awful.
Look, and as we know, there's a big difference between legitimate protest and everybody's right to do that, to congregate, and freedom of speech and so on, versus actually breaking the law and causing trouble that might put people in danger. There's a difference, of course there is.
And he's also managed to produce, with his lawyers, a 39-page document of facts about his case, which tells you what sort of a plank he is. Because, I mean...
Has he not got a job?
He obviously hasn't, no.
I was about to ask.
Who's got the time? It says, discussions were opened with the police 4 months before the event. Information provided to officers, including the location of the demonstration, the estimated numbers of people expected, and details of what materials, such as banners or speakers, would be brought to Trafalgar Square and elsewhere by anti-monarchist protesters. On the 26th of April, Smith provided details of the text that would be on the banners, and he said that he was very happy liaising with the police. And then they arrested him.
I don't understand why, you know, if you're going to create social disturbance, flagging it up beforehand therefore means you can do it.
Yeah.
That's just not a thing.
No, it shows really an incredible naivety, doesn't it?
Didn't do that.
Yeah.
No, it just shows an incredible naivety.
The police should be grateful. At least he gave him a warning.
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't suppose he'll do it again. But, I mean, it's just, I mean, the whole idea that this is not a monarchistic nation is completely wrong.
Every poll ever done shows that the majority of the British public value and want the monarchy.
But what I don't understand is when we had the coverage of the coronation, it really ticked me off, actually, that so many broadcasters felt the need to have debates on whether the monarchy should exist. I'm like, but no one has it. No one thinks that way.
No, and
like, why are you trying to ruin happiness?
And you remember all of the
time and a place.
And do you remember all the moments where they got it so wrong, particularly many of the broadcasters, at ITV, when they had that woman saying how terribly white the balcony was. And everyone sort of went, sorry. And the only people who nodded sagely were also on the ITV panel going, oh, yes, absolutely right. I mean, you know, it is ridiculous. Anyway, so Graham Smith, plank of the week. You might win it. You don't know. Coming back to Mr. Russell Quirk. Who's your second one?
My second nomination is the last night of the
This
proms.
is good, actually.
Last night of the proms. And I hesitate here because it's technically the BBC's last night of the proms.
Yes.
Of course, the BBC organise it, the BBC fund it, or rather, we do, in terms of the licence payer. So this was the last night of the proms over the last few days, which obviously, look, it's a celebration of, you know, music, culture. It's a wonderful institution, traditional. I love it.
Great British night.
British indeed, right? And it's a very patriotic thing. I think that's the word that I would use. And in fact, when you go there, and I haven't been, but when you go there, apparently you can buy Union Jacks.
Yeah.
So often, when you see the end of the last night of the proms, there's hundreds and thousands of Union Jacks.
Well, that's how you remember it, isn't it? You remember watching it on TV as a kid, and you see this wave of just flags everywhere.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So you buy them. However, this time, there were what I can only describe as EU activists, EU propagandists, that were there dishing out EU flags by the thousand.
They weren't actually EU propagandists. They were just Ramonas.
Or Ramonas. Same thing. Free of charge, right? So you can either buy a Union Jack or someone gives you something to wave. It's an EU flag. Maybe some people picked it up innocently, you know, in my opinion, shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
So what it ends up being then is this huge propaganda stunt, a political stunt, at something where there, in my opinion, there's no place for politics. So those on the left, and obviously those of us on the right, have criticised the fact that this turned into this kind of propaganda event. Those on the left are now saying, oh, all you Brexiteers, you can't have it all your own way. You can't be all for freedom of speech and so on and then not allow this to happen. But there's a difference, right? And the difference is the last night of the proms, as we said, is patriotic, flag waving. It's a British thing. To take it over with EU flags in some contrived, spiteful way to make a political point is a totally different thing altogether, and it should not have been allowed to happen.
No.
And it's frankly the BBC that allowed it to happen.
Well, they certainly take some blame. Let's have a look and see exactly what happened on the last night of the proms. Well, that was pretty ridiculous. This is how it should have been done.
I'm enjoying this far too much.
It's a workout.
There we go. Well done, everybody. You've got a story about waving the Union Jack, haven't you?
So when I was a member of the European Parliament, I actually had a little Union flag on my desk. I've got it at home still.
Yeah.
And I think it was the very first day we had to, well, the MEPs were supposed to be voting for the President of the Parliament, which was a fixed rigged thing anyway. But I stood up and when they said that I had to be one of the tellers in this election, I don't know why, I got excited and I waved my little flag. They went mad. Not allowed one of these in the EU.
No national flag.
No national flags inside the EU Parliament.
This is the ludicrous thing about the EU flag. The EU flag is not the flag of any country. It's
not a national
the flag of a political organisation. There is nowhere in Europe where I've ever been where you see people waving EU flags. You go to Italy, they're waving the Italian flag. You go to Germany, German flag. France, they're wearing, the French flag. They don't wave an EU flag. You might see the odd one sort of, unfurled above a town hall somewhere, but
it's not a thing,
European people who are in the European Union don't recognise the EU flag as something that they ever wave. No, it's only these Muppets who probably all live in Chiswick, as I said, who are Ramonas and who think that rejoining this failing organisation, which is failing, by the way, is a good idea. It's not a good idea.
I think it's sad that the last night of the proms has become so politicised. Do you remember during the BLM riots when they actually wanted to stop singing Britannia?
They did.
And then until Boris Johnson stepped in, and then they did sing it, but it was muted without the lyrics and all of that. And now, because of all the coverage this has gotten, because of how people are worked up, understandably, this will be the new trend. They'll always have something. The next time it will be some rainbow flag, and then a flag with a goat on it or something else.
But we've also ended up in this hideous situation where, this is our national flag, right? This is a combination of, the flag of St George and so on. So, England, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland. And yet we are told now that this is racist.
Yeah.
We're in a position
There's something
where,
wrong with it.
Town halls and schools will not fly this outside their buildings because it's seen as a little bit racist. Can you imagine going to the United States and saying to public sector organisations, you can't fly the United States flag outside your building?
It was absolutely utterly ridiculous. But we must move on. Esther, your next one, please.
Yes, I hope I get her name right. It's ARYNA Sabalenka.
Yes, I think so. That sounds about right.
Belarusian tennis player. I don't know if you've seen this video that went viral of her smashing her tennis.
Yes, I think it was that at Wimbledon, or was it?
Exactly, because she lost and she was so irate, and I was like, ugh. Yeah. Someone needs therapy. Anyway, she...
Well, hang on. Isn't she just a very excitable sports star who is very passionate about what she does?
Crew, though, apparently like a Netflix film crew.
Really?
Filming.
Oh, there is.
It wasn't...
are you saying it wasn't spontaneous?
No, not at all.
Really?
Apparently there was a whole Netflix crew in the corner.
Inside scoop.
Well, I heard.
I didn't know this. But anyway, she's not so much... she's a plank. The reason why she's a plank is because she was at a press conference and she was talking about how she thinks men and male and female athletes should be paid the same.
Yes.
And I told Russell, and he said, "Is she going to be playing 5 sets then?"
Yeah, I guess.
But when I saw that
video,
I was like, okay, we need an economics lesson here, because for some reason you have these female athletes like Megan Rapinoe in the US, and now her, and all sorts of female athletes that think this is a gender pay gap issue, and people are just trying to be mean to female athletes. At the end of the day, how professional athletes make their money is not by how good you are; it's how many people want to see you do what you do. Which is why you have Serena Williams, who's a very successful female tennis player that has no qualms about how much she earns, and you have other players that make less because they might not draw as many people to watch them. I don't understand why they choose to be economically illiterate about this. Because it doesn't make sense, because they're upset with when it comes to sports, but they never complain about beauty pageants, for instance, and the disparity between male beauty pageant contestants and female beauty pageant contestants.
Some places, though, where men and women are paid the same for winning tennis tournaments? I thought that had actually happened.
Yeah, that does. I think
it does happen in some places. But let's have a look at ARYNA, because here she is talking.
I think women deserve to be paid the same as men, because we sacrifice a lot. It's not like we're doing nothing and they paying us the same money. I think, yeah, we deserve this to be paid the same as men.
Yeah, look, Esther's absolutely right. If the commercials dictate that the prize money should be the same, then it will be the same, right? So if a women's tournament or a women's match can bring in exactly the same, not just in terms of the crowd and ticket sales, but also in terms of sponsorship.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, then of course it should be equal. But the reality is, and it's not a man versus woman thing, it's just an audience traction thing.
It's the economics of it, and I mean, tennis is one thing, but where this argument really annoys me is football. Right, because women's football, I've said this, I personally don't watch. I think it's unwatchable because the pitches are too big, and I've explained why.
Sorry,
that's the problem.
Pitches are too big for women.
The pitches are too, because they play on pitches the same size as the men, so their shots don't go as far, and it looks like football in slow motion, and it's god awful. But anyway, it's like if you compare how many viewers the Women's World Cup had compared to how many viewers the Men's World Cup had.
And the sponsorship.
But they get paid the same amount in some tournaments, but not in all tournaments, and that's what's kind of weird. So I think she's just justifying the fact that they get paid the same, and she thinks it's a good thing.
But what about then if we also convert that into, let's say, modelling, right? So I would imagine, I don't know much about modelling.
Are you talking about modelling for like COVID or modelling for...
No, modelling as in...
What sort of modelling?
Supermodels, Kate modelling.
Lingerie.
So mostly, I imagine, I mean, Steve might know
what
a bit more about
it. What do you need to know, Russell?
Yeah, if I could just ask Steve, mostly, I would imagine it's women that earn most money as models across the world rather than men. So you've got your men that are exceptions, but it's women, right? So there's no balance or equilibrium there.
Listen,
should there be?
Fair.
Or should there be?
You know, eat it up. Just get used to it. You know, if you can make as much money as you possibly can, whether you're a man or a woman, or somebody who's indeed non-binary, I'm not looking at anybody on the panel, go for it. That's what I would say. Coming up, we're going to go across to Burbank, California for the next one. And also, a woman at BBC who's not known for telling the truth, apparently. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week, the one show where you don't have to judge anything at all because we do it all for you. We've got some very interesting, sort of what I would call eclectic nominations this week from all manner of different places. It's now Steve Denya's turn to come up with his second one. Steve, this is going to be very popular,
guys,
I think, with our viewers.
You couldn't make this up.
Yeah.
This is the BBC. I keep thinking of you and Kev whenever I mention this story.
Yes.
Liar.
Yeah.
Liar.
Yeah, pants on fire.
This is the BBC disinformation correspondent, the chief fact checker.
Yes.
It turns out has been telling porky pies in her CV
That's
a few years ago. Marianna Spring, step forward.
Yeah.
Hopefully my plank of the week. Hopefully the plank of the week.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
So what did she say in the CV that was not
Well, she
correct?
falsely claimed to work with a BBC journalist when applying for a job in Moscow. And this journalist has said, never met her.
Yeah.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So it's kind of come back to order. This did happen a few years ago.
So she knows all about disinformation, but for entirely the wrong reason.
She does. My favourite part of the story was she was applying for a job with some organisation called Coda News, I think it is, runs out of Moscow, which actually does some really good work. And they had kind of somehow double-checked that she claimed to have been working during the Football World Cup with this woman from the BBC, who was a very well-renowned journalist.
Yeah.
And it turned out that it wasn't actually the case, but that she had met her. And it turned out that that was a very wild overreach, I think she described it as, didn't she? And then she said, the classic, which I think has killed her credibility stone dead, where she said, everything else on my CV is true.
Oh, no.
And you go,
oh, no.
sorry? So just a little bit of it wasn't true.
Are we suggesting just for a second then that the integrity of the BBC's disinformation unit might be called into question?
I would think so.
What I want to point out, as someone who actually went to journalism school as a trained journalist, got some acronyms behind my name to prove that point.
Yes.
The first rule of being a journalist is to check your facts. That's why you're a journalist. Otherwise, you're just a person on Twitter talking shite.
Right.
So why does the BBC need to have a fact-checking department? Every single journalist at the BBC should be fact-checking.
Yes. So exactly.
So she should have known that, right? I'm
like you, Alex. I get very wound up by these idiotic organisations called Fact Check and various other places where they go, we're going to check the facts on this. Well, you're not actually going to check the facts on it because they've already been checked if the journalist has done the job properly. Unfortunately, we now seem to have bred an entire generation of journalists who don't know how to check anything, you know, because I actually asked Marianna Spring if she could fact-check why the BBC had sent their climate editor to Alicante to tell us how hot it was, given that we could have just asked somebody who was there or looked at one of the many apps that you can find which will tell you how hot it is in Alicante.
Right, yeah.
The answer was, actually wasn't very hot. Just looks red, though, on the map, so that's OK. Anyway, instead of answering me, she blocked me. And then she complains all the time that she's the subject of this horrible harassment online because of her job. But let's have a look at her on Panorama talking about the facts.
The United Nations asked over 700 women, mainly journalists and some political activists, who are prominent on social media about their experiences of online hate. They then studied some of the accounts, including mine.
This is a word cloud that represents the abuse that you have experienced. The bigger the word, the more times it's been directed against you. But the biggest word that we see is the word liar.
You really couldn't make it up.
Who knew,
I mean,
who knew that they were staring into a fortune-telling, you know, sort of window of death? You know, isn't it weird, Marianna? Isn't it strange, Marianna, how the word most commonly referenced with regard to you is liar?
Yeah.
How strange
Maybe
is that?
if the cap fits.
Yeah. I mean, but it does. I mean, I'm like Alex. I can't stand these people that go, we're going to check the facts on this.
But also now, this is the latest thing to do, isn't it? Oh, people are being mean to me online. I'm
Yeah.
like, do you know what? Just don't read the comments under your tweets.
Right.
I mean,
And
try
also-
being a
and also-
Brexit Party MEP and then read the comments
Yeah.
under your tweets. You don't want to be
Exactly.
doing that, so just don't do
Right.
it.
I mean, she says it as though she's the only woman who's ever received threats and abuse on
And
Twitter.
no one's even heard of her.
No. I know. I mean, maybe somebody should fact-check how she got the job at the BBC, because they must have looked at her CV and gone, almost all of this is true. There's bits of it that might not be.
The odd bit.
Yeah, maybe this BBC could have a new kind of warning above any of their documentaries, because they're quite good at that.
I guess that we all know that people embellish their CVs, but in fairness, the one person that shouldn't embellish their CV is the person responsible for fact-checking
Maybe
on
they
the
shouldn't
BBC.
have advertised who she was. Like, if people didn't know she was just in the BBC as like kind of this
Or walking past it.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't say, because then people are going to look into her and they'll be like, well.
And have. So
see, this
she's
is the
kind of made her
problem.
bed.
Yeah.
hasn't she, really?
I think so. Absolutely right. Fact check on Marianna Spring. She told a lie in her CV by her own admission.
Which is probably why she's been called a liar a million times.
I would guess so. Alex, your final nominee.
Right, final nominee for
This
me
is a good one.
the flamboyant and very toothsome Mayor of Burbank, who nobody's heard of. He's called Constantine Anthony.
Okay.
He goes by the name Mayor Spanky.
Does he?
Because, well, I think he rather likes to be, you know, addressed quite firmly on the bottom.
Okay.
And as part of his campaign...
We've all been there.
Right.
Right.
No, is that because he's mayor of Burbank?
Possibly.
You know.
So basically, so you know, part of his campaign trail to try and become a senator in California, he was there getting spanked up by a drag queen, just
Really?
in full view of everybody. And
Well, listen, whatever gets you elected.
Well,
right?
spank of the
It's
week,
California.
at least.
Yeah,
At least I
See
should
what I
get
did there? Here we
spank
go. Here he is.
Uh-huh.
So he's in a setting which is obviously not a political one, it would seem to me. Can we have another look at that? We kind of missed it the first time. He is in some kind of a, what is he? Is he in a
Look at him
school
go.
gym or something?
I mean, he looks like he's enjoying that.
But this is so he is elected in that
He's
video.
the mayor of
And it is
Burbank.
California.
So it's not like
But he
years
wants
ago.
to
This
become
happened whilst he
senator.
was elected.
Right, and he wants to become senator. Apparently, because he goes by the name Mayor Spanky, one assumes he just goes about Burbank, you know, in the
Getting
supermarket.
spanked.
Woo, woo.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, is it me or does he look like
hit me
he
on the
was
fanny,
he was
as they
getting,
say in
he was
America.
getting off on that? Like
don't know,
he
but this is
he
also-
seemed aroused by that.
But this is also the nation that elected Donald Trump and then Joseph Biden.
But why does, without sounding like...
You're never going to let that go, right?
Without sounding like a modern-day Mary Whitehouse, which I pretty much am, let's be fair. Why does sex have to be brought into anything? I don't care if this geezer likes to spank. Some people do,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, I don't
But you
understand.
don't have to do it as a campaign.
I
Just,
don't
you know,
know- yeah.
be more like Bill Clinton, do dodgy things and pretend you're not.
Yeah, exactly
That's what we
right.
expect
Like a
from
good old-fashioned
politicians.
politician.
I'm not-
Exactly.
More of that.
Adultery.
More of
Good
that.
old-fashioned adultery.
Yes.
I'm not sure who he's
Bit of
appealing
cottaging
to.
on Hampstead Heath. Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
what
sure
you
who he's
wanna see.
appealing to there. I mean, because with the best will in the world, even if you take California into consideration, it's a pretty odd place. I mean, there's not that many people that are that much into spanking that you're going to vote for anybody who likes to be spanked, Are they?
I don't know. This is what I'm wondering. I'm like, I don't understand why. I mean, it's ironic, isn't it? Both of my stories have been about just randomly and arbitrarily inserting drag queens into everything. But this is just 2023, isn't it? If there's an event and someone's there, you better get out a drag queen.
Yeah.
It's just,
I mean,
why?
it's the
Why
growth
can't we
industry, you'd have to
just
say.
crack
I
on
mean,
with life?
you know, if you've got people wondering what to do with themselves, they can't find a job in their local area, just be a drag queen.
Yeah, there's
You
loads of
get
work.
hired for everything. You
Loads
get
of work.
hired for, you know,
think you'd make quite a
story
good
time
drag
at
queen.
school.
Opening hospitals.
Opening hospitals.
I reckon
you know,
if
taking
Mike-
part in political campaigns.
I reckon if Mike did drag, he'd be a bit like Betty Boothroyd.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I apparently know. People say I look like Joe Brand. So I'd be Joe Brand in drag, because I wouldn't have to do anything. I wouldn't even have to put a dress on, which is wouldn't wear them very often. I'd turn up with a jumper.
Can I be on that show, Mike?
Yeah,
honestly.
I think I would quite like to have a sort of plank of the week drag special where
Well,
everybody
there we
Absolutely
go.
not. Absolutely
Okay.
not.
Well, I mean, by all means, feel free to suggest that to anybody who's behind the scenes here.
Maybe do that at Christmas.
Yeah, we could do that at Christmas.
I will.
We've already had
giving
somebody
it
suggest
away.
Spank of the Week. That was another story. That was a few weeks ago. I can't remember why. But anyway, coming up, we're going to do my final nomination. It's back to the police. We had 2 police nominees last week. We haven't had one this week. So coming up, we're going to be looking at some police who did something really stupid. I mean, even for the police. I'm not joking. This is Plank of the Week. More coming up after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. What better way to spend a Friday night? And also coming up after this, it's the world according to Mike Graham. So you get another half hour of me talking at you as if there's nothing better to do on a Friday evening. Anyway, we're going to finish up, though, the final section of Plank of the Week. You've all made some fantastic suggestions, I have to say. This one, I think, is also a potential winner. And this is the Lincolnshire Police. We've known the police over the course of Plank of the Week this month and even this year to have done some pretty idiotic things, right? But I think the Lincolnshire Police may have to take the biscuit because there was a yoga class being held in a place called the Seascape Cafe. They were all having a great time doing their yoga, downward dog and all that, as you do. I don't do yoga either, by the way, so I've got absolutely no knowledge of this story at all. But suddenly people heard sirens going off in the background.
I love this story.
Yeah, and they couldn't quite work out why the sirens were getting closer. And if you've ever been anywhere where you hear sirens coming close to you, it's quite definitive because they do get louder and louder and louder. And you think, I wonder where they're going. And then suddenly they landed up at this cafe because apparently somebody had reported to the police that there had been a mass killing inside
In the
the cafe. Because, guess what? Because they'd seen lots of people lying dead on the ground.
Okay.
Now, I haven't seen very many mass killings, but I'm pretty sure that
cafes in Lincolnshire.
Unless you've done them all with sarin gas.
And
there
all
might
wearing
be-
latex.
There might be some blood.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
Or there might be some evidence that people had actually been shot or something. But no, the police didn't bother checking all that.
I mean, normally, if you get burgled or you get your car broken into or your retailer that's got a shoplifting problem, they don't turn up.
Well, we've
But
heard
if they turn up for mass killing.
we've heard all this week,
That's
haven't
yoga.
we? They turn up for mass killings.
That is the bar.
Yeah, that's the bar.
Is that it?
So I guess maybe, and no, I shouldn't probably say this, but because it'd probably be against some rule or other. But so if your shop's getting attacked by shoplifters, presumably you ring up the police and say there's been a mass killing.
I'm being
Right.
attacked by yoga instructors.
Or I'm being attacked by
Their downward-facing dog is in my face. My God.
There's people meditating all around me. I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, it's very offensive.
Anyway, so there we are. Well, listen, I guess it's time to make a judgment, isn't it? We have had some fantastic. Prince Harry not nominated.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
think
a
we
first.
should give it to Graham Smith on the grounds that the Republic are too unimportant. I quite like last night at the proms. That is really good. But I don't think it's fair to blame the BBC, incredibly. I know that
Really?
sounds weird. Yeah.
You okay?
No, I'm feeling a bit weird. The spanking mayor, I don't know, she's just odd, I think. I'm beginning to wonder whether it should be...
Oh, he's actually in a dilemma.
I know.
Oh,
isn't it?
I'm getting nervous.
He's in a dilemma.
Do you know what? See, I'm not going to let the BBC off the hook. I'm going to give it to Marianna Spring. Because Marianna Spring, the disinformation, misinformation specialist, the editor
That's
of
a
the
cracker.
BBC,
That's a cracker.
who's apparently most associated with the word liar when you put her name into Google, gets this. So, I mean, if she wants to explain how she managed to get it so wrong on her CV and how most of her CV is this is all very good, but actually a lot of it is not true. I'm terribly sorry. So well done, Marianna Spring. Here's some information for you. Not misinformation, not disinformation, information. You are the plank of the week. Russell Quirk, thank you very much indeed. Esther Krakue, Steve Denyer, Alex Phillips, absolutely brilliant, fantastic show. Well done, guys. We'll be back next week. And of course, coming next, it's me, The World According to Mike Graham. Stick with Talk TV.